Michael Hargrove was a 38-year-old senior project manager at a prominent construction firm in Denver. His life seemed stable, with a good job, a loving wife, Lisa, and their 7-year-old son, Ethan. While he often spent his days immersed in work, evenings were reserved for family. Michael took pride in being a supportive husband and father, believing he had built a solid marriage with Lisa over their 10 years together. Lisa, with her vibrant auburn hair and infectious laugh, was the light of his life. She had recently taken a part-time job at a boutique downtown. She said it was something to keep her occupied now that Ethan was in school full-time. Michael supported her decision wholeheartedly, happy to see her excited about her new routine. However, subtle changes began creeping into their lives. Lisa's work hours became more irregular, with late nights at the boutique and early mornings spent checking inventory. Often, Michael would wake up to find she had already left the house, leaving only a quick note. Her wardrobe also shifted, evolving from casual outfits to more polished and daring looks, a change she brushed off when Michael playfully questioned her about it. Michael wanted to trust her, as he always had, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. He chalked it up to his imagination, reasoning that Lisa was simply exploring a new chapter in her life. Still, unease lingered. One Friday evening, Michael was driving home from work, caught in Denver's usual rush hour traffic. He decided to call Lisa to check if she needed anything from the store. The call went straight to voicemail, which was unusual. When he arrived home, the house was quiet. Ethan was spending the weekend with his grandparents, leaving Michael and Lisa some rare time alone. Yet Lisa wasn't there. Instead, he found a note on the kitchen counter. Asterisk, running errands. Back soon. Love you. Asterisk. Michael felt a pang of confusion. It wasn't like her to leave without notice, especially when they'd planned a quiet evening together. Trying to shake off the discomfort, he grabbed a beer and settled into the living room. Time ticked by and Lisa didn't return. When she finally walked through the door later that evening, she seemed flustered. Michael asked casually about her errands, but her answers were vague, her tone defensive. The conversation quickly fizzled out, leaving an air of tension that Michael couldn't ignore. In the following weeks, Michael started paying closer attention to Lisa's behavior. She was increasingly glued to her phone, often stepping out of the room to take calls or sending texts with a coy smile. When he asked about her day, her responses felt rehearsed, as though she was carefully choosing her words. One Saturday morning, while Lisa was out, Michael decided to vacuum the house. As he moved through the living room, something caught his eye. A credit card statement peeking out of her purse. It listed a transaction from a high-end restaurant he didn't recognize, dated on a night she claimed to be working late. Michael's chest tightened. He knew he shouldn't jump to conclusions, but the inconsistencies were adding up. He put the statement back, determined to stay calm and gather more information before confronting her. The turning point came when Lisa announced she'd be attending a work retreat over the weekend. She provided details sparingly, and when Michael asked if spouses were invited, she waved it off, saying it was strictly for staff. That night, Michael searched online for the boutique's name, looking for any mention of a retreat. He found nothing. Michael's gut told him something wasn't right. He decided to take a day off work and follow Lisa the morning she left for the retreat. Staying far enough behind to avoid detection, he watched as she drove not toward the highway but to a cozy cafe downtown. There, she met a man in his late 30s. They greeted each other with a hug that lingered just a little too long before sitting down together. Michael's world tilted. He snapped a few photos from his car, unsure what hurt more, the betrayal or the realization that his suspicions had been right all along. He drove home, his mind racing with questions. Who was this man? How long had this been going on? And most importantly, what would he do now? Michael knew he couldn't confront Lisa without proof, but the thought of pretending everything was fine while she carried on this secret life was unbearable. That evening, Michael acted as though nothing had changed. Lisa returned from her retreat, cheerful and chatty, recounting vague stories about her colleagues. Michael smiled and nodded, but inside, he was a storm of anger and heartbreak. It was then that Michael decided to take action. He reached out to a private investigator, explaining his situation and providing the details he had gathered. If there was more to uncover, Michael wanted to know the full truth. Little did Michael realize that the evidence he was about to receive would not only confirm his fears but expose a web of deceit far more intricate than he had ever imagined. Michael waited anxiously for the private investigator's report, unsure of what to expect but certain it would change everything. A week later, the investigator, a no-nonsense woman named Rachel, called to arrange a meeting. Michael met her at a quiet cafe across town, far from any familiar faces. Rachel slid a slim folder across the table, her expression professional but sympathetic. "I'm sorry, Michael," she began. "This isn't easy news to deliver." Inside the folder were photographs, timestamps, and detailed notes. Lisa had been meeting the same man, identified as Greg, multiple times over the past 2 months. They frequented hotels, restaurants, and parks, locations that seemed calculated to avoid detection. The photos showed Lisa laughing, holding Greg's hand, and, in one gut-wrenching shot, kissing him in the parking lot of a boutique hotel. Michael felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. He forced himself to skim through the report, his stomach churning with each revelation. Rachel pointed out receipts and patterns in Lisa's movements, proving she'd been using her supposed work commitments as cover. "I know this is a lot to process," Rachel said gently. "Do you want to take some time before deciding how to handle this?" Michael shook his head. "No, I need to confront her." That evening, Michael prepared for the confrontation. He wanted to be calm and composed, but his emotions were a storm beneath the surface. He printed out some of the key evidence, intending to give Lisa no room to deny the truth. When Lisa arrived home, humming a cheerful tune, Michael called her into the living room. "We need to talk," he said, his voice steady but cold. Lisa looked at him, puzzled. "What's wrong?" Michael took a deep breath and placed the printed photos on the coffee table. "These," he said, pointing to the images, "are what's wrong." Lisa's face paled as she picked up the photos. For a moment, she seemed frozen, her mouth opening and closing without a sound. Then came the tears. "Michael, I can explain." "Don't," Michael interrupted. "I don't want excuses. I want the truth." Lisa sobbed, her hands trembling as she clutched the photos. "It's not what it looks like. I swear. It just happened." Michael's jaw tightened. "Lisa, things like this don't just happen. You made a choice. Over and over again. You made a choice to betray me and lie to my face." Lisa's tears turned to defensiveness. "You've been distant, Michael. Always at work, never paying attention to me. I felt invisible." Michael stood, pacing the room. "So your solution was to cheat? To risk our marriage, our family, because you felt neglected? You couldn't talk to me about it?" "I tried," Lisa shot back. "But you were always too busy or too tired. Greg listened to me. He made me feel alive." Michael stopped pacing and stared at her. "And what about Ethan? Did you think about him while you were sneaking around? Did you consider what this would do to our son?" Lisa's defenses crumbled at the mention of Ethan. "I never meant to hurt anyone," she whispered. I got caught up in something I couldn't control." Michael's voice was like steel. "You controlled it every time you lied, every time you met him. You don't just fall into a hotel room with someone." Lisa looked down, her tears flowing freely now. "What do you want me to do? How can I fix this?" Michael hesitated, his mind racing. Part of him wanted to scream, to demand answers to every painful question swirling in his head. But another part of him, the rational part, knew that nothing Lisa said would change what she'd done. "I don't know if this can be fixed," he said finally. "I need time to think. Until then, you're sleeping in the guest room." Lisa nodded silently, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs as she left the room. Over the next few days, Michael grappled with his emotions. Anger, betrayal, and sadness warred within him. But above all, he felt the need to protect Ethan. He didn't want his son to suffer because of Lisa's mistakes. They kept their interactions brief and civil, putting on a facade of normalcy for Ethan's sake. Michael sought advice from close friends and a trusted therapist, all of whom encouraged him to take his time in deciding the next steps. He also contacted a divorce attorney to understand his options. The attorney advised gathering more evidence and documenting everything in case things escalated. Meanwhile, Lisa seemed genuinely remorseful, going out of her way to show Michael she was sorry. She canceled her shifts at the boutique and deleted Greg's contact information in front of him, promising she would never speak to him again. But Michael couldn't shake the feeling that her actions were more about damage control than true repentance. One evening, while Michael was tucking Ethan into bed, his son asked an innocent but heartbreaking question. "Daddy, why doesn't Mommy smile as much anymore? Did I do something wrong?" Michael's heart broke. He kissed Ethan's forehead and reassured him. "No, buddy, you didn't do anything wrong. Mommy and Daddy are just working through some grown-up stuff." As Michael left the room, he knew one thing for certain. Whatever decision he made, it would be with Ethan's well-being as the top priority. This story is just getting started, and trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. If you're hooked, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more stories like this. Let me know in the comments what you think Michael should do. Stay and try to work things out or walk away for good. Stay tuned for the next chapter. Michael's decision to focus on protecting Ethan while navigating the emotional fallout of Lisa's betrayal marked the beginning of a tense new chapter. Despite their attempts to maintain a facade of normalcy, the atmosphere in the house grew colder by the day. The once warm family dinners turned into silent meals, and the laughter that once echoed in their home seemed like a distant memory. As weeks passed, Lisa's remorseful gestures continued. She enrolled in individual therapy and suggested they attend couples counseling. Michael agreed, not out of a desire to reconcile, but to gain clarity about whether their marriage was salvageable. Their first session revealed just how deeply their communication had deteriorated. In the therapist's office, Lisa tearfully admitted, "I never stopped loving you, Michael. I was just so lost." Michael's response was measured but firm. "Love doesn't justify betrayal. You had options. Talking to me, seeking help, anything but this." The therapist guided them through their feelings, but Michael struggled to see a path forward. Lisa's actions had shattered his trust, and rebuilding it felt like an insurmountable task. Meanwhile, Michael's private investigator continued digging into Greg's background. Rachel discovered that Greg had a history of similar affairs, often targeting women in vulnerable marriages. Armed with this information, Michael confronted Lisa during one of their therapy sessions. "Did you know Greg does this all the time?" Michael asked, sliding a new report across the table. "He preys on women like you." Lisa's face turned pale as she read the report. "I didn't know, I swear. He told me I was special." "Special?" Michael's voice was filled with bitterness. "You were just his latest conquest, and you risked everything for him." Lisa's sobs filled the room, but Michael felt no sympathy. For the first time, he realized that her betrayal wasn't just about him. It was about her insecurities and poor judgment. As tensions reached a boiling point, Michael began to take steps to secure his future. He started meeting with his attorney more frequently, preparing for the possibility of divorce. The attorney advised him to gather evidence of his financial contributions to the household, ensuring he wouldn't be unfairly penalized in the division of assets. Lisa, sensing Michael's growing resolve, made one last desperate attempt to salvage their marriage. One evening, she surprised him with a candlelit dinner, a photo album of their happiest memories, and a handwritten letter detailing her regrets and promises for the future. "I know I can't undo what I've done," she said, her voice trembling, "but I want to spend the rest of my life making it up to you." Michael stared at her, his emotions a tangled web of anger, sadness, and longing. "It's not that simple, Lisa. Trust isn't something you can just rebuild with a nice dinner and a letter." Her tears spilled over as she pleaded. "Then tell me what I can do, Michael. I'll do anything." But Michael couldn't give her an answer. He needed more time to decide what was best for him and Ethan. One fateful weekend, while Ethan was at a friend's house, Lisa left her phone unattended on the kitchen counter. A notification popped up, a text from Greg. Michael's heart sank as he read the message. Miss you. Let's meet soon. Fury boiled inside him. Despite her promises and therapy sessions, Lisa had maintained contact with Greg. Michael waited for her to return to the kitchen, confronting her with the evidence. You lied again, he said, his voice dangerously calm. You said you cut him out of your life. Lisa's face crumbled as she tried to explain. He texted me first, Michael. I didn't respond. But you didn't block him either, did you? Michael interrupted. You left the door open, just in case. Lisa fell silent, knowing there was no way to justify her actions. Michael walked away, his mind made up. This was the final straw. The next day, Michael met with his attorney to finalize the divorce papers. He outlined his terms: joint custody of Ethan, an equitable division of assets, and a stipulation that Lisa would not introduce Greg or any romantic partner to Ethan for at least a year. His attorney assured him these terms were fair and enforceable. When Lisa was served the papers, she broke down in tears, begging Michael to reconsider. But his resolve was firm. This isn't just about what you did to me, he told her. It's about what you risked doing to our family. Ethan deserves better. As the legal process unfolded, Michael and Lisa navigated their new reality as co-parents. Ethan, blissfully unaware of the full extent of their troubles, adjusted to the shared custody arrangement. Michael poured his energy into creating a stable, loving environment for his son, determined to shield him from the pain of their separation. Lisa, meanwhile, struggled to rebuild her life. She moved into a small apartment and continued therapy, grappling with the consequences of her choices. Though she tried to reconcile with Michael several times, he remained steadfast in his decision. Months later, as the divorce was finalized, Michael reflected on the journey he had taken. He had endured heartbreak, betrayal, and uncertainty, but he had emerged stronger and more self-assured. He focused on building a brighter future for himself and Ethan, embracing the lessons he had learned along the way. The chapter on his marriage to Lisa was closed, but Michael knew his story was far from over. He was ready to face whatever came next, armed with the knowledge that he deserved respect, honesty, and love. And that brings us to the pivotal conclusion of this emotional journey. What would you have done in Michael's shoes? Let us know in the comments below. If you've been captivated by this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heartfelt and thought-provoking recaps. Stay tuned for our next story. Michael's discovery of Lisa's ongoing communication with Greg was the tipping point he had dreaded but expected. It wasn't just a breach of trust. It was a reaffirmation that her promises and therapy sessions meant little in the face of her inability to truly let go of the affair. For Michael, this wasn't just about her actions. It was about the lack of respect for their family and the life they had built together. After their explosive confrontation, Lisa tried to salvage the situation by deleting Greg's number and showing Michael the action. However, the damage was already done. Michael's trust was shattered beyond repair, and he knew he had to take action. Not just for himself, but for Ethan's future. A few days later, Michael received a call from his attorney. The evidence of Lisa's continued contact with Greg added weight to his case. The attorney recommended using this new development to secure favorable terms in their divorce settlement. Michael agreed, deciding to approach the situation methodically rather than emotionally. The next meeting with the attorney was focused on fine-tuning the divorce terms. Michael's attorney proposed full custody of Ethan, citing Lisa's poor judgment and questionable priorities as grounds. While Michael wasn't sure if the court would grant full custody, he agreed it was a solid starting point for negotiations. He also added a clause requiring both parties to agree before introducing new romantic partners to Ethan. I want to ensure Ethan has a stable environment, Michael explained. He doesn't need to be caught in the middle of this. Meanwhile, Lisa's behavior became increasingly erratic. She oscillated between apologizing profusely and lashing out, accusing Michael of being cold and unforgiving. In one heated argument, she shouted, "How can you throw away 20 years of marriage like this?" Michael's response was calm but firm. "You threw it away, Lisa. The moment you decided to let someone else into our lives, you made that choice. The stark reality of his words silenced her, but the resentment in her eyes spoke volumes. Lisa began to realize that her actions had led to this inevitable conclusion. Despite her efforts to repair the damage, Michael was no longer willing to compromise his values or his dignity. As the court date approached, the tension between Michael and Lisa grew palpable. Lisa's attorney reached out to propose mediation, hoping to avoid a lengthy court battle. Michael agreed, knowing it was in everyone's best interest to settle amicably if possible. During mediation, Lisa's demeanor shifted. She appeared subdued, a stark contrast to her earlier defiance. She offered to give Michael primary custody of Ethan, provided she retained weekend visitation rights. She also agreed to the clause about romantic partners, acknowledging that it was a reasonable request. "I just want to be part of Ethan's life," Lisa said softly. "I don't want to lose my son." Michael considered her words carefully. Despite everything, he didn't want to alienate Lisa from Ethan's life. He agreed to her terms, provided she adhered strictly to the custody agreement and refrained from contacting Greg or involving him in Ethan's life. As the mediation concluded, both parties signed the agreement, and the tension seemed to dissipate slightly. However, the reality of the situation hit Lisa hard. For the first time, she truly grasped the extent of the damage she had caused. She broke down in tears, apologizing to Michael once more. "I know I've lost you," she said through sobs, "but I hope someday you can forgive me." Michael didn't respond immediately. He simply nodded, acknowledging her apology but withholding the forgiveness she sought. He wasn't ready to let go of the pain, and he wasn't sure if he ever would be. Ethan, meanwhile, remained blissfully unaware of the legal proceedings. Michael made a concerted effort to shield him from the turmoil, focusing on creating positive experiences during their time together. They went on camping trips, explored local museums, and spent quiet evenings playing board games. These moments brought Michael a sense of peace and reminded him of his purpose, to provide stability and love for his son. Lisa struggled with her new reality. Moving into a smaller apartment and adjusting to her limited time with Ethan was a humbling experience. She continued therapy and began volunteering at a local shelter, hoping to find some semblance of redemption through helping others. However, the weight of her choices lingered, and she often found herself overwhelmed with regret. One evening, after dropping Ethan off at Michael's house, Lisa lingered at the door. She looked at Michael with a mixture of longing and sorrow. "Do you think we'll ever be friends again?" she asked hesitantly. Michael hesitated before answering. "I don't know, Lisa. Right now, I need to focus on moving forward. Maybe someday, but not now." Her shoulders sagged, but she nodded, accepting his words. As she walked away, Michael felt a pang of sadness. Despite everything, there was a part of him that missed the woman he had once loved. The weeks turned into months, and the divorce was finalized without further complications. Michael was awarded primary custody of Ethan, and the division of assets was fair and equitable. Lisa adhered to the custody agreement, and their interactions became more civil over time. Michael focused on rebuilding his life, channeling his energy into his work and his relationship with Ethan. He also joined a support group for single parents, where he found a sense of camaraderie and understanding. Through these connections, he began to heal, finding solace in the shared experiences of others. As for Lisa, she continued her journey of self-discovery and redemption. She remained committed to therapy and eventually cut all ties with Greg. She knew it would take time to rebuild her relationship with Ethan and earn Michael's forgiveness, but she was determined to try. In the end, Michael and Lisa's story was one of heartbreak, resilience, and growth. While their marriage couldn't be salvaged, they both found a path forward, learning from their mistakes and striving to create a better future for themselves and their son. And that wraps up this gripping chapter in Michael and Lisa's lives. What are your thoughts on how things unfolded? Do you think Michael made the right choices? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more engaging stories. Stay tuned for our next recap. The tension reached its breaking point on the night Lisa decided to confront Michael over the custody agreement. She arrived at his home unannounced, her face a mixture of desperation and determination. Michael, who had just put Ethan to bed, was surprised to see her at the door. "We need to talk," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Michael hesitated but ultimately stepped aside, letting her in. The living room, usually a place of calm, now felt charged with unspoken words and unresolved pain. Lisa paced the room before finally blurting out, "I can't lose Ethan, Michael. I can't lose my son." Michael folded his arms, his expression firm but not unkind. "You're not losing him, Lisa. You'll always be his mother. But this arrangement is what's best for him right now." She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "I've made mistakes, I know that, but I'm working on myself. I'm trying to be better." Michael sighed, his voice steady but edged with frustration. "Lisa, this isn't just about your mistakes. It's about trust. It's about providing a stable environment for Ethan. Right now, I can't trust you to do that." Lisa's pleas lingered in the air, but Michael stood his ground. The conversation was emotionally draining for both of them, and Lisa eventually left, her shoulders slumped in defeat. It was a moment that solidified Michael's resolve. He couldn't let his emotions cloud what was best for Ethan. The next day, Michael received an unexpected call from Greg. The audacity of it stunned him. Greg claimed he wanted to clear the air, insisting that he and Lisa were no longer in contact. Michael's anger boiled over, but he managed to keep his composure. "You have no business calling me," Michael said coldly. "Whatever happened between you and Lisa is irrelevant now. Stay out of our lives." Greg's attempt to insert himself into the situation only reinforced Michael's belief that moving forward without Lisa's influence was the right choice. As the final custody hearing approached, Lisa's behavior became increasingly erratic. She oscillated between moments of clarity and outbursts of anger, leaving Michael worried about her stability. Ethan, perceptive as ever, began to sense the tension, asking questions that Michael struggled to answer without revealing too much. "Is Mommy mad at you, Daddy?" Ethan asked one evening. Michael knelt down to Ethan's level, his heart breaking at the confusion in his son's eyes. "Mommy and I are just figuring some things out, buddy. But we both love you very much, and that will never change." Ethan seemed satisfied with the answer, but the encounter left Michael feeling the weight of the situation more acutely than ever. The day of the custody hearing was a turning point. Both Michael and Lisa presented their cases, with Michael emphasizing his commitment to providing a stable and nurturing environment for Ethan. Lisa, visibly emotional, argued that she deserved more time with her son and that she was making strides to improve herself. When the judge rendered the decision, granting Michael primary custody while allowing Lisa weekend visitation, Lisa broke down in tears. It was a bittersweet victory for Michael. While he was relieved that Ethan would remain in his care, seeing Lisa's despair was a stark reminder of the toll the situation had taken on everyone involved. After the hearing, Michael reached out to Lisa, extending an olive branch despite their strained relationship. "Lisa, I know this is hard for you, but for Ethan's sake, we need to find a way to work together." Lisa nodded, her voice shaky but sincere. "I know. I'll try." Their conversation marked the beginning of a tentative truce, one built on the shared goal of ensuring Ethan's happiness and well-being. In the weeks that followed, life began to settle into a new rhythm. Michael focused on his job and his time with Ethan, cherishing the moments they spent together. He also started attending a local support group for single parents, finding solace in the shared experiences of others navigating similar challenges. Lisa, meanwhile, threw herself into therapy and volunteer work, determined to prove to herself and to Michael that she could change. While the road ahead was uncertain, she was committed to rebuilding her relationship with Ethan and, hopefully, earning back some of Michael's respect. The story was far from over, but the climactic moments had laid the foundation for a new chapter in Michael and Lisa's lives. They were no longer partners in marriage, but they were united in their love for Ethan. And as they navigated the complexities of co-parenting, both would learn valuable lessons about resilience, forgiveness, and the enduring strength of family bonds. What do you think about how things unfolded? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more captivating stories. Stay tuned for our next deep dive into another gripping tale. The tension in Michael's life reached its boiling point one stormy Friday evening. The day had started like any other: school drop-offs, emails, and a quick lunch meeting. But as night fell, everything seemed to unravel. Michael was getting ready for a quiet night in with Ethan when his phone buzzed. It was a message from Lisa. "We need to talk. Now, I'm coming over." Her tone wasn't one of desperation like before. This message was curt, commanding, and eerily devoid of emotion. Michael's gut told him that something was brewing, something bigger than any of their previous confrontations. He responded quickly, hoping to keep the peace. "Ethan's here. Let's talk tomorrow." But Lisa replied almost immediately, "I'll be there in 15 minutes. Michael sighed heavily. He knew there was no stopping her, so he quickly prepared himself mentally, putting on a calm demeanor for Ethan's sake. He tucked his son into bed earlier than usual, ensuring that he'd be asleep by the time Lisa arrived. The last thing he wanted was for Ethan to witness another argument. 15 minutes later, Lisa's car screeched into the driveway. She stormed in without knocking, her hair damp from the rain and her expression a mix of frustration and determination. Michael could tell immediately that this wasn't going to be a productive conversation. "What's going on, Lisa?" he asked, his tone measured but firm. Lisa dropped her bag onto the floor and crossed her arms. "I know you're trying to take Ethan away from me. Don't even deny it." Michael frowned. "What are you talking about? The custody arrangement is clear. You have visitation rights every weekend." "That's not enough," Lisa snapped. "He's my son too. I made a mistake, but I'm not some monster who doesn't deserve to see her child." Michael sighed, trying to remain patient. "Lisa, this isn't about punishing you. This is about what's best for Ethan. Stability, consistency. That's what he needs right now. You think I'm unstable?" Her voice cracked, and Michael could see the tears brimming in her eyes. "I think you're going through a lot," he replied carefully. "And until you sort things out, I can't risk." "Risk what?" she interrupted, her voice rising. "Risk me being a mother to my own son? Do you think I'm some kind of danger to him?" Michael shook his head. "Lisa, that's not what I'm saying. But you have to admit that things have been chaotic lately. Ethan needs structure, and I'm trying to provide that." The conversation escalated quickly. Lisa's emotions swung between anger and despair, while Michael struggled to keep his composure. She accused him of manipulating the situation to make her look bad, of turning Ethan against her. Michael, in turn, brought up the messages she had sent him, the missed visitation days, and her erratic behavior. "I'm trying to work on myself," Lisa yelled, tears streaming down her face. "But you're making it impossible. You don't even give me a chance." "You've had chances, Lisa," Michael said, his voice firm. "I've been patient. I've tried to work with you, but I have to think about Ethan first." His words seemed to hit her like a physical blow. For a moment, she stood there silently, her shoulders slumping as if the fight had been drained out of her. Then, in a barely audible voice, she said, "You've already won, haven't you?" Michael didn't respond. He didn't feel like a winner. All he felt was the weight of the choices he'd made, choices that were breaking his family apart. The pivotal moment came later that night when Michael heard a soft knock on his bedroom door. It was Ethan, his small frame silhouetted in the doorway. "Daddy," Ethan said, his voice trembling. "Is Mommy okay?" Michael's heart sank. He walked over and scooped Ethan into his arms, carrying him back to his room. "Mommy's just upset, buddy, but everything's going to be okay." Ethan looked up at him with wide, tearful eyes. "Why does Mommy cry so much?" Michael struggled to find the right words. "Sometimes grown-ups go through hard times, but it doesn't mean we don't love you. We both love you very much." Ethan seemed to accept the answer, but his question lingered in Michael's mind long after his son had fallen asleep. It was a stark reminder of the impact this situation was having on Ethan, and it strengthened Michael's resolve to shield him from as much of the conflict as possible. The next day, Lisa didn't show up for her scheduled visitation. Michael called her repeatedly, but her phone went straight to voicemail. Worried, he reached out to one of her friends, who revealed that Lisa had been drinking heavily the night before and was in no condition to drive. It was a turning point for Michael. He realized that as much as he wanted to believe Lisa could turn things around, her actions were proving otherwise. He decided to take the matter back to court, filing for full custody with supervised visitation for Lisa. The legal process was grueling. Lisa fought back fiercely, hiring an aggressive lawyer and making claims that Michael was trying to alienate her from Ethan. The courtroom became a battlefield, with both sides presenting evidence and calling witnesses. Michael's lawyer emphasized his stable home environment and his consistent care for Ethan, while Lisa's lawyer painted her as a mother desperate to reconnect with her son. The turning point came when the judge requested a psychological evaluation for both parents. The results were revealing. While Michael was deemed fit and emotionally stable, Lisa's evaluation highlighted her struggles with stress, impulsivity, and unresolved emotional trauma. It was a sobering moment for everyone in the room, but especially for Lisa. As the hearing progressed, Michael found himself grappling with conflicting emotions. He didn't want to hurt Lisa, but he couldn't ignore the reality of the situation. He had to protect Ethan, even if it meant making difficult decisions. In the final moments of the hearing, Lisa stood up and addressed the judge directly. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were filled with tears. "I just want to be a good mom," she said. "I know I've made mistakes, but I love my son more than anything." The judge nodded solemnly before delivering the verdict. Michael would have full custody, with Lisa granted supervised visitation until she could demonstrate consistent improvement. The courtroom was silent as the decision sank in. Lisa looked devastated, but there was also a glimmer of determination in her eyes. Michael approached her cautiously as they left the courtroom. "Lisa," he said softly, "this doesn't have to be the end. You can still be a part of Ethan's life, but you need to take care of yourself first." Lisa nodded, her expression a mix of pain and resolve. "I will," she whispered. For him, it was a bittersweet conclusion to a turbulent chapter in their lives. Michael knew the journey wasn't over, but he felt a sense of relief knowing that Ethan would have the stability he needed. At the same time, he held onto the hope that Lisa could find her way back to being the mother he knew she could be. Lisa's struggles hit a crescendo in the days following the court's ruling. The realization that she'd lost primary custody of Ethan wasn't just a blow to her pride. It was a wake-up call. She started attending mandated therapy sessions as part of the court's conditions for her supervised visitation, but her progress was slow. Michael, on the other hand, had to juggle his newfound responsibilities while keeping an eye on Lisa's attempts to claw her way back into Ethan's life. A month after the ruling, Lisa showed up unannounced at Michael's doorstep. This time, there was no stormy outburst or dramatic confrontation. She seemed smaller. Somehow her shoulders hunched, her voice softer. "Can we talk?" she asked, her gaze darting nervously toward the door as if afraid Michael might shut it in her face. Michael hesitated. He had promised himself that he wouldn't let Lisa's emotional turmoil derail the stability he was trying to build for Ethan. Still, the defeated expression on her face made him step aside and let her in. They sat at the kitchen table, a space that had become a battleground in the past but now felt eerily quiet. Lisa spoke first. "I'm sorry for everything," she began, her voice trembling. "I know I've made a mess of things, but I need you to understand. I never wanted to hurt you or Ethan. She paused, taking a shaky breath. "I didn't know how to handle everything falling apart." Michael leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "Lisa, I don't doubt that you love Ethan, but love alone isn't enough. He needs consistency. He needs to know he's safe." Lisa nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I know. I'm working on it. Therapy's been eye-opening. I've realized how much I've let my own issues affect everyone around me." There was a long silence as Michael considered her words. He wanted to believe her. For Ethan's sake, he needed to believe her. But trust wasn't something he could give lightly anymore. "What do you want from me, Lisa?" he finally asked. "I want a chance to prove that I can be better," she said earnestly. "For Ethan. For myself." In the weeks that followed, Lisa began showing real effort in her supervised visits. She arrived on time, stayed focused on Ethan, and followed through on her commitments. Michael noticed a change in her demeanor, less defensive, more reflective. But the real test came when Ethan started asking questions. "Why doesn't Mommy live with us anymore?" he asked one night as Michael was tucking him into bed. Michael's heart clenched. He had prepared for this question, but it didn't make answering it any easier. "Mommy's working on some things right now," he said gently. "She loves you very much, but she needs some time to get better." "Better from what?" Ethan's brow furrowed. "Is she sick?" "In a way, yes," Michael replied, choosing his words carefully. "But she's getting help, and she's doing it because she wants to be the best mom she can be for you." Ethan seemed to accept the answer, but his next question hit Michael like a freight train. "Do you think she'll come back home someday?" Michael paused, unsure of how to respond. "I don't know, buddy, but no matter what happens, you'll always have a mom and dad who love you." Meanwhile, Lisa's therapy sessions began delving deeper into the roots of her behavior. Her therapist helped her confront unresolved childhood trauma and the insecurities that had fueled her erratic actions. Slowly but surely, she started rebuilding her sense of self-worth, not as someone defined by her mistakes, but as someone capable of growth. Her progress wasn't linear, of course. There were setbacks, missed sessions, moments of doubt, but she persisted. And though Michael maintained his boundaries, he couldn't ignore the fact that Lisa was trying. The turning point came during Ethan's 8th birthday party. Michael had planned a small gathering with a few of Ethan's friends and their parents. Lisa had been invited, but with conditions. She couldn't bring any guests, and she had to coordinate her attendance with the supervising social worker. Lisa arrived early, carrying a carefully wrapped gift. She was polite, almost timid, as she greeted the other parents. Michael watched her closely, half expecting some kind of outburst or misstep. But she surprised him. She spent the entire party focused on Ethan, laughing with him as they played games and taking pictures of him blowing out the candles on his cake. Later, as the guests were leaving, Lisa approached Michael. "Thank you for letting me be here," she said quietly. "It meant a lot to Ethan. And to me." Michael nodded. "You did well today, Lisa. Keep it up." Her eyes glistened with tears, but she didn't cry. Instead, she offered a small smile. "I will." By the time the holidays rolled around, Michael found himself cautiously optimistic. Lisa had completed her therapy program and was attending support group meetings regularly. Her supervised visits had been going so well that the court was considering expanding her time with Ethan. But the real surprise came on Christmas morning. Lisa had been invited to spend the morning with Ethan before joining her parents for dinner. She arrived with a modest gift for Michael, a framed photo of Ethan with a handwritten note on the back. "Thank you for everything you've done for our son," it read. "I'm grateful every day that he has you." For the first time in years, Michael felt a glimmer of hope, not for their relationship as a couple, but for their ability to co-parent effectively. The story's climax unfolded in a way Michael hadn't anticipated. It wasn't a dramatic confrontation or a sudden revelation. It was the quiet realization that both he and Lisa were finally moving forward, not as adversaries, but as two people working toward the same goal, giving Ethan the stable, loving childhood he deserved. Lisa still had a long way to go, and Michael knew there were no guarantees. But as they sat together watching Ethan Tier open his Christmas presents, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: peace. As time passed, the cracks in Lisa and Michael's lives began to mend, though not perfectly. The events of the past year had reshaped both of them in ways neither could have anticipated. They learned to navigate their new roles, Michael as the primary caregiver and Lisa as a parent rebuilding her place in their son Ethan's life. This chapter of their story, though filled with heartache, ultimately became a testament to resilience and growth. The court revisited Lisa's case 6 months after granting Michael full custody. Her steady progress impressed the judge, who granted her unsupervised visitation. Though Michael was initially apprehensive, he recognized that denying Ethan time with his mother would ultimately hurt him. For Ethan's sake, He chose to let go of his lingering mistrust and gave Lisa the space to prove herself. Lisa's growth was evident in how she approached these visits. Instead of trying to overcompensate for her past mistakes with lavish gifts or grand gestures, she focused on the little things. She cooked Ethan's favorite meals, helped him with his homework, and even joined him in his beloved art projects. These small acts of love slowly rebuilt the bond she had nearly destroyed. Ethan's own healing was just as remarkable. He no longer seemed torn between his parents, a weight that had visibly burdened him before. Instead, he flourished, excelling in school and making new friends. Michael saw a joy in his son's eyes that had been missing for a long time, and it reassured him that he had made the right decisions, even the hard ones. Michael, too, underwent significant changes. The turmoil of the past year had forced him to reevaluate his own priorities and what he wanted from life. He poured his energy into creating a stable, loving home for Ethan, and in the process, he discovered a newfound sense of independence and self-worth. He also found himself slowly opening up to the idea of dating again. It wasn't easy. The scars from his failed marriage were still fresh. But when he met someone special, a kind, understanding woman named Laura, he realized that his heart was capable of healing. Laura was patient and supportive, never pushing Michael but instead becoming a quiet source of encouragement. Their relationship developed naturally, and for the first time in years, Michael felt truly happy. When Laura met Ethan, the two bonded almost instantly. She treated him with kindness and respect, never overstepping her role. Seeing Ethan smile around her was all the reassurance Michael needed that they were heading in the right direction. Lisa's journey of self-discovery was not without its challenges. She occasionally stumbled, especially when confronting her lingering insecurities. But her therapy sessions and support group provided her with the tools to keep moving forward. She began volunteering at a local community center, using her experiences to help others navigate their own struggles. It gave her a renewed sense of purpose and pride, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Her relationship with Michael evolved, too. Though they would never return to being a couple, they found a way to co-parent effectively. Their communication became more open and respectful, and they both made an effort to keep their personal grievances separate from their parenting. For Ethan's sake, they attended school events together and even managed to celebrate his 9th birthday as a family. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. The final resolution came one quiet evening as Lisa and Michael sat together on the porch during one of Ethan's sleepovers at her apartment. They talked about their son, about how far they had all come, and about the future. "Michael," Lisa said hesitantly, her voice tinged with regret, "I want to thank you for giving me another chance. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope someday I can earn it." Michael looked at her, his expression unreadable. After a long pause, he said, "Lisa, forgiveness isn't about deserving it. It's about letting go of the past so we can move forward. For Ethan, I've let it go. We'll never have what we had before, but we can be better for him." Tears welled up in Lisa's eyes, but this time they were tears of gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the yard, Michael felt a sense of peace. Life wasn't perfect, but it was moving forward. The pain and betrayal that had once consumed him were now memories, lessons that had shaped him into the person he was today. Lisa, too, was no longer the woman who had shattered their family. She was rebuilding, piece by piece, and Michael couldn't help but admire her resilience. For Ethan, the future looked bright. He had two parents who, despite their flaws, loved him deeply and were committed to his happiness. He had found stability and security, and he was thriving in ways that made both Michael and Lisa proud. And so, their story came to a quiet but hopeful conclusion. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was real. It was honest. It was a testament to the fact that even in the wake of betrayal and heartbreak, there is room for healing, growth, and new beginnings. Thank you for sticking with us through this emotional journey. If this story resonated with you, please let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more compelling stories like this one. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to share more with you. Until next time,